Yeah. Hey, finally, Fernando Mendoza. I read, I think it was in The Athletic, one of the guys said, his superpower could be his dorkiness, and that he's so genuinely optimistic. You tell me, in pro locker rooms, how do you think his personality will work?
Yeah, I think this is what works in a locker room. Okay, excellence at your job. If you're able to be the best in the world at what you do, we respect that. The locker room respects that. The other thing is your work ethic. We just respect that. I don't care what locker room you're in, we respect that. You're giving it everything that you have. And then, the other thing is just the authenticity. Don't be one guy over here and another guy over there. Like the authenticity, like those three things, we can play with that. We can work with that. But if you don't have those things, then I don't really, you're not all about the team. You're maybe a little bit selfish, like whatever, like, get out of here. We got enough of that. So no, I think that's one of the great things about the combine. Like I'll be there. Not everyone will be throwing. Mendoza probably won't be throwing. But I remember being at the combine with guys like Drake May and Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix and some of these guys, Caleb Williams. They weren't throwing. It's okay. Like there's still so much to evaluate about a quarterback, even at the combine when you're not throwing. And so with Fernando Mendoza, like I would encourage him. And I've met him. He's great. He's everything that you said. But lean into who you actually are and just be authentic with that. And the locker room will love you. The fan base will love you. Just strive to be the best quarterback that you can be. All this other nonsense, like that's not what it's about. It's not what it's.
It's genuinely amusing to observe the ongoing media narrative. There's a persistent effort to find reasons why Pete Carroll might not be the right fit for this role. And now the angle seems to be that his unique, perhaps slightly quirky personality could actually be his greatest asset. And honestly, it's exhausting to witness. The underlying assumption seems to be that there's only one acceptable template for leadership, one specific style that commands respect. But that's simply not reality. People possess diverse personalities and varied approaches. The way Josh Allen naturally commands a locker room is fundamentally different from how Sam Darnold does it. Jared Goff's leadership style isn't identical to Patrick Mahomes's, and Lamar Jackson's presence is entirely his own. They're all distinct. There's this pervasive misconception that a singular, correct method exists for everything. Matt really articulated this perfectly because it ultimately circles back to one essential quality: authenticity. Are you exceptional at your profession? And are you committed to putting in the work? That's the equation. Those two elements form the non-negotiable foundation. Nothing else matters if those boxes aren't checked. I was reflecting on this concept recently, particularly in the context of basketball and broader cultural shifts. In previous eras, there was a certain status, a flex, associated with a particular lifestyle. Going on the road, being pursued by admirers, partying, living that high-energy, unattached existence that was often portrayed as the pinnacle of success. But the cultural compass has shifted. Nowadays, the genuine flex seems to be domestic stability, being a family man, being married to a wonderful partner, raising children. That lifestyle now carries a different kind of weight. When someone can say, "I've got that stable home life," there's an undeniable respect that comes with it. The individuals who haven't arrived at that point, who are still operating with a more immature mindset, they're increasingly viewed as not quite understanding the bigger picture. They haven't grasped what truly matters. In today's environment, having the complete picture, professional success alongside personal fulfillment, is far more impressive than the old playboy archetype. This cultural evolution extends directly to personality types in leadership. The players who might struggle to respond to someone like Pete Carroll are increasingly the ones being left behind by the league's progression. It's really that straightforward. If you can't adapt to different leadership styles, you're becoming obsolete. You're clinging to an outdated framework. This isn't 1978. It's not 1989. It's 2026. Society has evolved, and team cultures have evolved in tandem. The expectations are clear: show up, do the work, compete relentlessly, and be a genuinely good person. There's significantly less tolerance for inauthenticity or toxic behavior now. In the past, there was almost a perverse appreciation for edge, for anger, for difficult personalities. It was almost celebrated. Now, unless you're operating at an absolutely transcendent, once-in-a-generation talent level, that approach backfires. And even then, the tolerance is temporary. The support will evaporate quickly. The moment adversity strikes, the narrative shifts. Consider the contrast. Look at how swiftly and passionately people rallied around Sam Darnold. The Seahawks organization, the Vikings community, they embraced him. Remember when Jared Goff led the Lions to that playoff victory against the Rams? The outpouring of support was immense. People genuinely wanted to wrap their arms around him, to celebrate his redemption arc. Now, contrast that with someone like Kyler Murray during his challenging moments. How many people rose to his defense? How many rallied around him? I don't recall that happening. The support wasn't there. The difference often comes down to authenticity and how you're perceived as a person, not just a player. And this brings me back to the framing of the conversation around Pete Carroll. Even in articles attempting to be positive, there's this defensive posture. We think his unique personality might actually be his superpower. Even that framing suggests a need to justify, to convince readers that he'll exceed diminished expectations. It's exhausting because the reality is simpler. He's going to be excellent. The culture he'll cultivate, the leadership presence he and Clint Kubiak will establish together, has the potential to fundamentally redefine the Las Vegas Raiders. I recall when the franchise made changes a few years ago, the rhetoric was all about understanding the Raider way. That phrase was repeated endlessly. And I pushed back on that then, just as I would now. That concept, in the mystical sense people intend it, means absolutely nothing. There's no eternal soul of a franchise that persists unchanged through decades. That's not how organizations function. It doesn't even hold up to logical scrutiny. There is no singular Raider way in terms of playing style or team identity that remains constant. Now, if you want to discuss organizational culture in terms of front office philosophy, how the general manager and ownership make decisions, how they conduct business, that's different. That's about operational consistency. But when you're discussing coaches and players, there is no fixed essence. It evolves continuously. It transforms with each generation. The Chicago Bears of today, with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, bear no resemblance to the Bears of the 1970s, 80s, or 90s. The Kansas City Chiefs under Mahomes and Reed are entirely distinct from any previous iteration of that franchise, and that's precisely where the Las Vegas Raiders stand at this moment. The focal point, obviously, is the combination of Pete Carroll and Clint Kubiak. That is the centerpiece. That is the foundation upon which everything else will be constructed. This will be the defining storyline from now until September, simply because it represents the core. This partnership will establish the identity, the culture on and off the field, and usher in a new era for this franchise. Players will come and go. That's the nature of the NFL. But the foundational leadership, Carroll and Kubiak, ideally remains in place for a minimum of 10 years. That's the vision. Anything beyond that is a bonus. That's the stability you're trying to establish. And it remains amusing that people still feel compelled to convince themselves one way or the other about whether this will succeed. Either they're trying to talk themselves into believing it can work, or they're attempting to justify their skepticism that it won't. Meanwhile, the rest of us can simply observe and trust the process. Those are simply my perspectives on the matter. I'm genuinely interested in hearing your thoughts. What's your assessment of the Las Vegas Raiders hiring Pete Carroll? Do you believe his unique personality will translate into effective leadership? How do you envision him connecting with the locker room? Do you think he and Clint Kubiak can genuinely transform the culture? Share your opinions in the comments. I make it a point to read every single response, whether you align with my viewpoint or completely disagree. Either way, let's generate some meaningful discussion. Let's engage in some spirited debates. But most importantly, let's keep it enjoyable. And please, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. We're cultivating an incredible community here, and I genuinely value having you as part of it. My goal is to build something that fosters genuine connection, something we're all truly excited to contribute to. I believe we're making substantial progress toward that vision. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It significantly enhances visibility and supports the algorithm. Thank you so much for your continued support.